Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of MoCast. I guess you already know by now we're getting into a lot of details and spec analysis with this series. And today we have a very special episode because one of the love letters of the Melee gang is Fury Warrior. And Fury had its ups and downs, and I'm pretty sure the folks that we have here today will be able to guide us through on everything. Who do we have here today, Flame? Who do we have here today?
Right, well, we have three of the biggest brains in the Fury community, and I'll let everyone just talk a little bit about themselves, who they are, what they do, and just get people to know you guys so they know who they're talking to and how can they find you in the Skyhold community. Let's start with Anda and work our way through Maxonville.
Yo, I'm Amanda. I play Hunter and Warrior for pieces, so I'm not exclusively Warrior anymore. I used to play a lot of dungeons, but that kind of died out with Shadowlands for various reasons. So right now I'm just a raider, basically.
I'm Max, character named Saraline, which is probably more recognizable, unfortunately for me. I'm a raider in pieces, warrior main. Been warrior main since like WoD or something. I think it was WoD. And I'm also like Theory Crafter for warrior, mainly Fury. Mainly on the Fury side of things. Although I like dabble in arms theory crafting, obviously, and I'll play whatever specs better. Obviously, I'm not like a...
Hey, I'm Vil. I raid and limit as a warrior mainly. And I've been playing warrior since about Legion. I do some work in Skyhold, but not nearly as enough as Max. He's definitely the big brain around here. And yeah, I pretty much just raid, don't do many dungeons.
It's interesting that I'm getting a vibe here regarding dungeons. Like people, these warriors here stop doing dungeons for some reason.
Maybe we can talk about that now with everybody being AoE capped. Like, why aren't Fury Warriors being a little bit more happy about it than anybody else? I guess. Why actually aren't dungeons so popular? At least with
from your perspective.
For me, it's mainly dungeon design. Just the pacing of dungeons. The way a lot of stuff works out just isn't as much fun as in the previous two expansions to me.
I would say I have like issues with dungeons. For Warrior, it's just like, if you ever play like a dungeon, you know, and you have like a boomkin in your team, you like hear the tank calling for boomkin stuff. The boomkin has like all this utility they can use. Hunter is like binding shot. And in Warrior, you're just like hitting the mobs, which definitely like is fun to just hit mobs and do damage. But it does feel bad, like doing a bunch of dungeons and not feeling like you're contributing much utility-wise, other than just doing damage. We have like a slow and a stun, and that's it, which feels a bit bad. I like feel like I would enjoy dungeons a lot more in Warrior if we contributed more to the overall success of a key, you know, with some form of utility. I'm not sure what to think of that though. Maybe we can talk about that later.
Yeah, just definitely what Max said. I think arms has a bit more utility with some intervene and parry stuff, but arms is kind of not in the best spot right now, so you're kind of just sticking to Fury. And yeah, just in general, I think the dungeon design it's just kind of boring. It kind of feels like a lot of the dungeons this expansion are similar to like King's Rest and Shrine of the Storm, where they're just like long slogs the whole time.
That's something that we can definitely get into because it seems like it's a predominant opinion about everybody else. And obviously, people knew that it's not a secret that Fury doesn't have that much utility, which is kind of a bummer.
But it has damage.
Yeah. Hey, and if you want, you can just go up to a pack and just shout in their face super hard and just walk a little bit slower, you know?
Piercing Howl is seriously a good ability, but kiting is, you know, kiting lowers the group's DPS, so it's not really the best thing to do most of the time.
And unfortunately, Warrior wouldn't be the only one with an AoE slow, so...
Yeah.
All right.
It's like the baseline for utility is, do you have a slow? And Warrior hits that baseline, but...
And Boomkin has Vortex, so...
And Typhoon.
I'm guessing we're gonna compare a lot of Boomkin stuff during this episode, which is
What do you guys think about Boomkin?
I don't know. Wait, this is a Fury podcast, okay?
Yeah, I'm not
Fury. We bring in the love for Fury Warriors, man.
Rabbit hole.
But we usually start off these podcasts, you know, asking, you know, the folks that, you know, are in. I'm gonna ask you guys too, depending on where you actually started. I heard some, you know, some WoD or, you know, something else. But like from your perspective, which was the best iteration of Fury Warrior In which expansion more exactly, and why?
I probably had most fun playing Fury in Nighthold during Legion.
Right.
Just because the way the tier set bonus gave you more enrage uptime, Draw for Souls added some cool interactions and stuff. But overall, BFA Fury also wasn't bad, I think.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I loved it in BFA.
For me, again, I feel like most Fury Warriors are gonna say Nighthold, especially if they started like in WoD or Legion. I've heard really good things about Mist's Fury Warrior, but I didn't play that expansion, unfortunately, so I can't comment on that. For me, so it was definitely Nighthold and then Taurus were the most fun for me. I think BFA Fury Warrior had its high points as well, like in Eternal Palace, with like stuff like Blood of the Enemy. AoE was really fun with like Cold Steel Hot Blood. And even right now, I think its AoE is fun with Signet and Blade Storming all the time. I love Blade Storm as an ability, so I enjoy that a lot, but nothing beats, Convergence, Draft of Souls, and Nighthold. Sit there, battle cry, do 1 million damage, Odin's Fury for 1 million damage. Like, that was just so fun. I love the burst in Legion for sure.
I definitely agree. I think Legion was Fury's high point in general. For me, it's more Antorus. I think Antorus had by far like the best legendary or the best execute rotation Fury had. And there was just so many small things you could have max in Antorus in terms of Avatar, Concordance, stuff like that. I do agree with both of them that Fury's AoE does feel a little better right now, but it could be just because it's so strong. It definitely feels good to just double Blade Storm packs and dungeons.
You guys mentioned Odin's Fury, and I remember it's like, oh, that was such a good ability. And I know a lot of people were sad when it went away. And I mean, they did give the Legion legendary abilities to a lot of specs. I don't know if they thought that Fury didn't need it, but it felt so good. And now it kind of matches what you guys are saying, because I also think Fury right now is really fun, mostly because of the Signet. The Fury itself playstyle is always fun. It's just smashing things. It feels very satisfying.
Really fluid. I always enjoy this about Fury.
Yeah.
It's really smooth all the time.
You should definitely try the Signet legendary, which I think kind of makes the spec so awesome. You just have like this high burst that like really frequent burst.
I've seen some shit, man. I've seen it.
And do you guys think that maybe something like Odin's Fury can be a good addition to the spec, or do you think like these short burst windows is what makes Fury more fun to play than maybe in other iterations?
They could for sure replace Dragon's Roar with Odin's Fury, because the way they changed Dragon Roar from Legion going into BFA was basically just extending its range, removing the damage taken increase. It's basically Odin's Fury, but not as interesting because you don't spin red when you use it.
Oh yeah, the other thing with Dragon Roar too is it's kept at like 2 targets now, right?
It's reduced damage past 1 target right now, which feels awful. I think, Odin's Fury would be fun to bring back, but I think an issue right now is even if you brought Odin's Fury back, it wouldn't be the same as in Legion, because the reason that was so fun in Legion and it did so much damage was because of how Battlecry worked in Legion, right? Giving you 100% crit, and you had the crit damage artifact traits. I would like to see it be brought back, because like Anda said, it is just a cooler animation than like Dragon Roar, in my opinion. And I think playstyle wise, it could definitely work on a 45-second cooldown. It would line up with Wreck like a decent amount of time in keys. You could just like hold it for that 1 minute Wreck Blade Storm that you currently have. So I wouldn't mind it being brought back. I don't think it needs to be, but I'd enjoy it, right? I'd take anything I can get. It's definitely fun to have more AoE.
Yeah, I think
actually, I was gonna say like something like disregarding animations and stuff, something like Spear of Bastion or Ancient Aftershock, that like button that you just press and in 1 GCD you would do a bunch of damage like instantly. If Spear did more damage, that'd be true, but like Ancient Aftershock, you press it, you do a bunch of damage. That feels great, and that's like what Odin Fury brought to the spec. So I definitely would like it to be brought back in some form, even as a talent. Maybe replace Meat Cleaver or Dragon Roar.
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention that. I think it fit pretty well in the talent tree right now. If you just replace Meat Cleaver, you have a 30-second cooldown, 45-second cooldown, minute cooldown. Obviously, Dragon Roar and Odin's Fury are pretty similar, but I think it'd still work depending on the fight. Like if ads are every 45 seconds instead of 30 or something like that.
What if Odin's Fury would be the only uncapped one on that? But like slightly lower damage in comparison then. So you would have an uncapped option if you needed burst AoE like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good idea. Especially because after they changed Dragon War, Fury has no way past the target cap.
Is Bladestorm AoE capped?
At 8 targets, it's capped at 8.
Right.
And like most of the specs have at least one way of passing it. Like Demon Hunter has like Fell Rush, especially right now with Unbound Chaos.
Yeah.
I think Windwalker, it's like Whirling Dragon Punch. His Final Reckoning is uncapped. Arms has even Warbreakers completely uncapped for Arms, but Fury doesn't have anything. It's just Dragon Roar is technically uncapped because it does hit every target, but it's the square root scaling or whatever they added this expansion where like at one target it does full damage and everything past that it keeps like meteoring and reducing its damage for every target past that. So it's not truly uncapped. So having Odin's Fury as an uncapped option would be kind of cool.
Yeah, it was. We were talking with. I don't know if it was with the Feral boys and gals, but the AoE cap feels very awkward, and obviously I don't know if there's any person that's a fan of it, and if they really want to keep the AoE damage reduced, maybe they can make everything kind of be like that, where maybe you'll have Flame Strike also have to reduce damage past X amount of targets or things like that. Because even though like a lot of classes have been AoE capped now, while Fury was always at least basically you can only hit like 4 targets normally. Now it feels like Fury doesn't have anything, while mages have one, survival hunters, havocs, they all have like at least one thing that does not have an AoE cap. And speaking of that, because I know you guys mentioned the dungeons not being very fun, probably because of the encounter design, which we can also talk about, but I wanted really to get your guys' opinion on how do you think Fury feels and performs right now in Shadowlands, obviously compared to everything else, because if I recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think in the first couple of weeks of Nathria, Arms was doing better than Fury. And then Fury kind of overtook it. And there's always this stigma, which if you guys want, you can also
gear scaling. Is that the thing?
It's also
Double scaling.
that's that age-old argument that Fury always scaled better in the late game, and now scaling seems to be a term loosely used by pretty much everybody. This
when you don't know what to say, just say gear scaling.
Yeah, it just doesn't scale right. So maybe you guys can touch a little bit about in the whole context of how is Fury in Shadowlands. How do you guys feel about it?
Yeah, just in general, I think Fury's performance right now is pretty good. Mostly because its power in Cleave, something like Stone Legion Generals, Denathrius, it's pretty good because you have some Execute and then you have the Phase 2 Cleave. Your single target is definitely lacking a little, but I think with next patch, the Sinful Surge Legendary, the Event 3 Legendary, it brings it up to par and gives you like some of the best Execute in the game besides maybe Shadow Priest. So I think Fury is definitely gonna be a top performing melee going forward.
Like I agree with Phil. In raid, it's actually like pretty good outside of single target right now. It like performs really well on like most encounter types in raids, which is some AoE, execute phase, and like otherwise single target. And even though Fury's lacking in single target, even right now it's pretty good in execute, and it's very good on like cleave, especially if it's under that 5 target. If it's like 5 targets, it's just right for Fury. And in dungeons, like even with the lacking utility, for your normal, weekly keys or pug keys, or even like, weekly keys with my, my guildies, who are all very good players, like it's not like you need the utility. The Fury's damage is great in that setting, right? Even while capped, it just does so much on such a short cooldown that you're gonna do perfectly fine in majority of dungeons. It just feels a bit awkward when you do, like you look at, let's say, stuff like MDI, or the Great Push coming up soon. Fury doesn't really have anything that can provide in that category. And it's a bit awkward, in my opinion. And I don't know what the solution is, because I think what it needs, outside of maybe some uncapped option, would be extra utility. But it's already great in raid in a utility sense. Rally is very, very strong in a raid. Battle Shout is already pretty good. And you don't really need a ton else in terms of a raid utility. So if they add anything too strong, it busts them in raid. And also, even if Fury's bad in PvP, Arms still exists and, terrorizes them a bit over there. So it's an awkward situation of like, would you add to Fury to give them utility in keys? I would love a misdirect or a tricks or whatever, but I don't think that fits the warrior class fantasy. That would just feel great because, if anyone's played Fury in keys, you'll have died to Strat at least once probably. You run in there, Blade Storm, and then you're on the ground. So that would feel great, but I don't think that fits our class fantasy. So I don't know what they give it.
You just have to play with the prot pally, dude. Then you're gonna be fine on threat. But yeah, to touch a bit on what Max said is, especially execute, Fury is very competitive on single target, and on most hard encounters, the execute phase is the damage check of the fight. Like, think of the Nathrius. You have a damage check in P2. It's usually not that difficult though, but the P3 damage check was rather difficult early on, so Fury kind of excelled there. And Arms was better early on, but Fury got buffed a bit a couple weeks into Nathria. So we can't forget about that
you
either.
mean like 21?
20, yeah,
yeah,
twice.
like 20% at this point
Only
overall.
like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it was like what?
I think it was
5%,
twice.
3%, 3%. I think.
Really?
I think it was 3 times.
Yeah,
I think
maybe that's
I know
correct.
the aura right now is like 21% or something.
Yeah, we started off with like 11, 8,
Yeah.
9, something like
I think
that.
it was like
that
9,
seems
8.
reasonable.
That'll do it.
But yeah, it's like and also what Max said with Arms and PvP, I think it's really funny how Warrior's utility in PvE is basically Battle Shout and Rally. And in PvP, they're currently the melee with the best utility for
my
PvP,
God.
hands down. Like across
There's no
Disarm, Reflect, the Safeguard thing,
Intervene,
Overwatch, like
the stag,
the banner as well.
the banner, yeah.
They have everything. Like you can counterplay most things in the game with it right now. It's very, very crazy. Kind of sad I'm not really into PvP. I think I'd be enjoying that.
Oh yeah. You'll definitely be up there for sure. I mean, I remember in BFA there was a time, at least in twos, where Fury was the actually preferred spec.
It was 8.2.
The self healing was pretty fucking
Yeah,
good.
because of the self healing. Yeah, it was mainly a thing in 2. I think it was in 8.2. I think with around the time the essences where you had blood at the enemy
You
and
just
all
couldn't
that.
kill him. It's like just
Conflict and strife.
without disarm.
Yeah, it was invincible, man, and the movement as well, right? Because he could like, if you touch somebody, you can never be slowed. You can just
Yeah, the Bloodthirst PvP talent felt
Yeah,
so
man.
good.
It was amazing.
He would just chase
For good times.
people around and they couldn't stop you. It felt so good.
Just wanted to mention, since you brought it up really quick, I don't know how much we're going to talk about PvP, but Fury actually got a really insane PvP talent on the PTR. Whenever you rampage someone, you get 60% Mortal Strike, I think, for 50 seconds.
What?
And you guys know you're
That's 5
rampaging a lot.
seconds,
So,
5.
yeah, I think 5 seconds and it stacks as your rampage hits. But it's really crazy, so maybe we'll see Fury again.
That's basically
Holy
what was missing. So, did I understand this correctly? You're gonna get a Mortal Strike effect.
The 60% one, better than the Sharpened Blade one.
Wait, 60% healing reduction.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
it
do
might be a
believe.
bug.
I do believe it's a bug because right now, like it is 15% per stack and it stacks up 4 times and it triggers off each rampage hit because rampage hits 4 times, right? It
You
could be
instantly
that
get
it's
60.
just a bug and they want one rampage is 1 stack and you can only basically get the 60% during your recklessness. Otherwise, you're never gonna have enough rage to keep up that 5-second debuff.
Yeah.
Even then, that's
15% is pretty good.
it's still pretty good.
I mean, it was the main thing that was missing for Fury, and that's the main reason why Arms was. Well, we talked about utility, but that Mortal Strike is so important in PvP.
Yeah, as a healer trying to heal a target of an arms player is
And if it's 60%, that's insane, dude. Wow.
Definitely a very strong Mortal Strike. They gave a lot of specs Mortal Strikes.
Yeah.
The only thing Fury will have, like Arms will have over Fury still next patch is in PvP at least. I think like Arms is definitely still tankier in PvP because of like defensive stance.
Yeah.
And you have a bit more rage to spend on Ignore Pain, but 60% MS will definitely be
Ooh, yeah.
that healing reduction will feel so nice.
I don't think Fury gets War Banner or Overwatch either, though.
I thought we got Overwatch. We don't get Banner though. You might be right about Banner. I
Banner
think we
for
get
sure. Overwatch, I'm not sure. Disarm we get, of course.
yeah. Overwatch is one of the big reasons why Arms feels like a complete spec because prior you kind of had a little bit of a harder time dealing with casters. Not as much as other classes, but Overwatch now is like just crazy. You have to track so many things. Since we're on the topic, obviously Fury got a couple of buffs over the course of the first patch, and it's looking pretty good. As far as we're concerned, we kind of dabble a little bit into all of the classes, and we also do what every theory crafter likes, tier lists. But we do look at how specs perform compared to everybody else in terms of popularity at the very least. And Fury seems to be climbing way higher. It's like, however relevant they are, this remains to be debated. But Fury seems to be doing really well outside of MDI scenarios, because with MDI you're just gonna have like crazy 5-pack pulls into just mage doing 300k DPS or whatever.
Or Boomkin.
Oh, fuck
Boomkins,
yeah, Fury, you guys seem to agree that Fury is in a good state. But also, another thing that going into Shadowlands, a lot of people were happy about, and it has been asked for, as far as I personally know, a couple of years at the very least. Single-minded Fury came back to let you equip one-handed weapons and make it awkward to loot dungeon weapons. I got better weapons on my Pro Warrior than I have on my Fury Warrior. It's infuriating. But
Infuriating.
Right? What do you guys think of single-minded Fury? Last time I checked, it was a little bit behind Titan's Grip. I don't know how it is now, but that was like 2 months ago, maybe, or something like that. What do you guys think in general of it? Do you think it's a good addition to the spec? Just having that freedom, that maybe class fantasy, that appeal?
I can start on this, just talk about at least numbers-wise. It's still behind. It's like, all things equal, it's behind because Titan's Grip scales better. It's like, I'm using the scale word, but two-handed weapons gain a lot more stats, right? And the 12% aura buff that you get by wearing double one-handed weapons just pales in comparison to double two-handed weapon, with raw stats and strengths and weapon damage. If you run your own sims, or I've ran the sims obviously, at like lower eye level, like normal raid, or even below that, like M0s, Single-Minded Fury can sim equal or ahead of Titan's Grip, assuming the stats on the weapons are the same. But as you get higher and higher eye level, like right now at 233, I think Titan's Grip has like a 2% edge over Single-Minded Fury. And unless they do something, it's just going to continue doing this. And so next raid, when you get to Mystic eye level weapons, next raid, Titan's Grip is going to be even further ahead of Single-Minded Fury. So I'm not sure what they can do in terms of like adding it as an option for class fantasy. I wish it was a transmog instead, so we didn't have to worry about this balancing act between the two weapon types. Or they made it like a separate playstyle. If anyone's played Frost DK, their two weapon types like give you different playstyles to a degree, right? Where you're two-handed, Frost has big obliterates and you play obliteration or whatever. And then dual wield has like a different playstyle and prefers breaths and stuff like that. So I wish it was similar, just like how it was in the past, if back in WoD and whatever, Single-Minded Fury gave you more rage gen, and people still think it does, unfortunately, because they're used to the old Single-Minded Fury. So like, I'll see questions all the time in the Fury channel and Skyhold of like, hey, should we play like a rage gen build with like Frozen Berserker with Single-Minded Fury and we get like lots of rampages? And I have to like tell them no, because the rage gen is now normalized. Rage gen on auto attacks is lower if you have Single-Minded Fury, so the overall rage gen is the same. So I'm not sure what the purpose of it is coming back in its current form. It should just be a transmog, because that'd give people way more freedom to like play with the weapon types they want, right? They can just transmog two-handed swords into one-handed swords. They get to use their cool transmog, and they don't have to worry about, being behind on damage at all.
I believe they don't make it a transmog because they don't want to open like the floodgates basically for Frost DKs then asking, hey, I'm two times one-handed. I want a two-handed weapon now. Because I just don't think that's the intention with it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that definitely could be it. That would like make sense, but it's just definitely awkward now. I'm curious if they'll buff it on the PTR, because right now it'll be even further behind. Like I said, I think I don't remember the percent. I simmed it at like the new raid eye level, but it's even further behind than the 2% I mentioned for right now. So we'll see what they do, I guess.
But what you forgot to mention is two-handed weapons. I mean, you said they give more stats, but specifically they give more stamina. With Titan's Grip, you're just gonna have, 8% more health? And especially in a progression scenario, that's that can mean the difference between living and dying a mechanic rather often, more than the 10% move speed that single-minded Fury gives you. Because Fury already gets move speed during Enrage, and we have Charge and Leap, and if we go Venti again for prog or not, we have the Gate. If we stay Night Fae, we have the Soul Shape, so we are not really too concerned about the 10% move speed buff, all things
Even
considered.
10%? Isn't it like 5?
Is it 5? It might be 5. It's not relevant. That's what I know. The stamina is much better.
Yeah, it's whatever. Yeah, pretty much what Max was saying. SMF is not really a thing right now. I think the only scenario you could ever consider it is if you were in a situation where you had a certain amount of currency for PvP or Valor, and those one-handed weapons were such a big upgrade, but you were like just under the amount you need to purchase the two-handed weapons, then maybe you could consider it, but that's pretty much the only scenario where I could see using one-handers right now.
That would be very specific, considering you would have all of these weapons already looted at an item level.
Yeah.
Where it competitively would be worth to discuss upgrading. Also, I did want to ask you guys about Venthyr versus Night Fae, and how the majority of the warriors who were progressing through the raid were Venthyr, and then they switched to Night Fae to do their M+, which is, you know, the Covenant discussion that we can eventually have. But I did want to point out, because Max, you said that Frost has something similar, and they do with Obliteration favoring two-handers and Breath of Sindragosa favoring dual wield. And apparently 9.1 so far, Obliteration might even be better than Breath in single target, which is an interesting thing. But that actually kind of segues the conversation into what we wanted to talk to you guys about, especially in talents, because Frost enables those two playstyles based on talents, because it can equip both types of weapons, and Fury doesn't seem to have that. And maybe we can talk a little bit about other talent designs, or maybe something that can be added to accommodate a single-minded Fury build, anything like that, or maybe there's something just design-wise flawed about the spec that might never see single-minded Fury ever be brought again.
Like on a surface level, I think they need to unnormalize the rage gen on the auto attacks. I think that would go a long way. Like if they generate the same amount of rage per swing, and then single-minded Fury attacks faster, then you do have that, you know, faster playstyle with single-minded Fury at least. And then you can maybe build into talents that support that playstyle more. Another thing they could add that would, you know, help single-minded Fury would maybe be some talent, or if a weapon or trinket comes out that supports attacking faster. You know, like example would be, this is like an ancient example, but like Legion, the faulty countermeasure from like Vault of the Wardens, where your auto attacks did more damage for like a 30-second window of the trinket. If they added something like that back, or any on auto attack effects, then single-minded Fury could be a build that gets viable. But I don't know specifically what they could do. I think unnormalizing the rage gen, so that way single-minded Fury does have a higher average rage gen, so they get more rampages at least, and then maybe an extra talent somewhere in the tree, maybe on that Frothing Berserker row, because like it's Cruelty, Frothing Berserker, and then the Bloodthirst crit talent, which that's just an abomination. That should be Cold Steel Hot Blood. You could turn that into something with auto attacks maybe, or I don't know, or even like War Machine generates more rage from auto attacks, although that's very unattuned. So
I think you hit everything. I mean, the most recent example with on auto attack would be Reckless Flurry. Our matter of fact, in 8.2, I actually played one whole raid in Eternal Palace with a 2-hand and a 1-hand in my offhand. With some haste stuff and Reckless Flurry, it was not good. I got like a couple 90th percentiles on single target fights, and you can't use Raging Blow with that, so you couldn't use Raging Blow. I was just sitting there spamming Whirlwind. You also can't use Furious Slash because that requires a 2-hand in the offhand.
I mean,
that was a very good build up. I was expecting you to say like, oh man, it actually did like pretty well.
What a tease.
Yeah, I think Max hit most of the stuff you could maybe do, and especially the stuff with like proccing off of autos. And I think the big takeaway from what he said is they really should consider Seed, because that talent is definitely one of the most dead talents Fury has right now.
the funny part is we say it's dead, and it's like as dead as Frothing Berserker. Like both those talents like have like the same issue on like single target. Frothing Berserker has like the niche use on like Stone Legion generals for like rage gen to get your wreck back up at the perfect time more consistently. But both those talents are undertuned to all hell right now, and it does suck because
If
old
you
Frothing
wanted
Berserker
more
was fun.
consistently, I think you'd still use Seath though on SLG, because Seath is actually consistent while Frothing is just a 20%
Frothing's
chance.
RNG.
I've seen people use Seath just for that reason on SLG. I haven't done it myself yet. I think I just play Cruelty because I just play for Goliath and boss damage. I don't really care.
Oh, I definitely wanted to talk about that row because I think that Frothing Berserker had a different iteration in the last 3 expansions each time, right? If I'm not mistaken. And they did that. Cruelty and Seath were new. And when I picked up Fury on the beta, the Shadowlands beta, it seemed on concept, because I don't know if we had numbers back then when I picked it up. It seemed like that was a build defining row, because each of them seemed to handle rage a little bit differently, and maybe it's a tuning issue. But if they were balanced, could you guys see that turning into like a build, kind of like a build defining role? Maybe not too much, but it definitely felt like you would get like a different flavor of the rotation regarding which talent you would pick on that row.
If we look at BFA, I can't even remember the third talent on the row, but we had Frothing and Carnage, and they played vastly different with how you approach the spec. Frothing played a lot slower than Carnage. I did prefer Carnage most of the time, really, but especially in 8.3, Frothing was pretty good because the 10% of it and the haste did scale with like most of the corruption bonuses, so that just kind of propelled it a bit forward in that regard. But what was the last talent on the row again?
It was Massacre.
Oh, yeah, you didn't play that on Fury.
Yeah, Massacre was something.
The addition they made to Massacre this expansion was really good, giving it like the execute CDR. That was great.
Because it definitely, I think, didn't they change execute in BFA pre-patch where it now generates rage?
Yeah,
So-
unfortunately this is like, I don't know if it's a hot take or not from me. I know like, I think Vil and Anda share my opinion on it, but Legion had an issue for a lot of the expansion where a lot of players that played Fury didn't like the execute rotation, because once you went into execute, Rampage kind of got kicked to the curb, and you start spending your rage on execute. Until Antorus, where you got the legendary ring and it gave you the Massacre talent, where execute crits gave you free rampages, and then you could spam both at the same time, and it
that
felt
was
great.
so good. Oh,
It felt so good. You would just go execute, rampage, or repeat for the entire execute phase. But in BFA, they tried to solve that by making execute a generator. It's just Hammer of Wrath from Ret Paladin. It's like the same concept. And it does make the like execute rotation make more sense and like flow better. But my, fantasy as a warrior, I want to hit execute and I want to make it hit hard, and now that's a generator on a cooldown, it doesn't hit as hard. So I do miss that a bit, but in its current form, I think the Massacre talent like makes it a lot more fun, because then you get to press it way more often with the CDR that it gives execute and the increased like threshold. That's pretty fun. Going back to like the conversation about that talent row though, Frothing, Cruelty, and Seath in this expansion, it kind of already is a build defining row, but it's just undertuned so it like doesn't actually do anything. For example, if you're building for like execute phase damage only, there's a build you can play where you play Vicious Contempt, the Conduit, which increases Bloodthirst damage when the target's below 35% health. And then you can take Seath, which prioritizes Bloodthirst even more. And that's technically like the best build in Execute. That plus Ashen Juggernaut Conduit. But it's so undertuned outside of that niche situation that you just default to Cruelty, because it just emphasizes the playstyle that you're already doing, which is Raging Blow at 2 stacks and then Bloodthirst and Raging Blow again. And Frothing's just super undertuned. If you didn't know, Frothing's Rage Refund isn't even buffed by Recklessness, the double Rage during Rec. So it's just super undertuned, and it's really weird. In beta, it was 40 Rage, and that made more sense, I think, than the current 20 Rage. Then you could feel the refund when it happened. I think it definitely just needs to be tuned up. And then, like you guys said, it could be something like you play these talents on different fights or with different builds, and it would change up maybe patch to patch.
Yeah, they're also trying to push kind of a Raging Blow build. And we kind of go with that right now. Like we prioritize Raging Blow pretty high. But there's also a conduit where you rampage and you have a chance to get a Raging Blow back. But like Max was saying, the tuning is just so bad on it, it's not really worth considering.
All of those issues kind of come down to the issue of just of the design of how Fury's damage breakdown works out, right? Because the only abilities we have that really do damage are Rampage and Execute. The rest is just a builder that, honestly, at this point, right now, Bloodthirst and Raging Blow could be merged into one button and you wouldn't notice a difference in your playstyle. You'd just be pressing one button instead of two different ones. They kind of essentially feel the same when you press them, I feel like.
And since we're on the topic of talent being tuned, what do you guys think of Wrecking Ball? Because from a concept in my my pleb Fury brain, it seemed like a really cool thing to have to manage, but I don't remember playing with it yet. I don't think it was simming very well last time I played my Fury.
Do you mean Meat Cleaver? Or
I think it means Onslaught.
Onslaught?
Why do I call it Wrecking Ball? Was it?
It
Wrecking
has
Ball
the
with
same
a whirlwind
icon, I
talent.
believe.
Yeah, it has the
Yeah,
same
it has the same
icon.
icon, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, right. That's why. I don't know. Yeah. Onslaught.
It sounds cool too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wrecking Ball with the whirlwind damage talent, wasn't it? Like the whirlwind procs in Legion.
Yes, the
That was-
250
That
to
was-
300. I think they buffed it up from 200 to 300 over the course of the expansion.
Yeah.
Back when Whirlwind did damage and you had the legendary belt.
Dude, it did so much damage.
Talking about Onslaught though, that's another example I think of just it being really undertuned, because if you're playing Vencier with Condemn, you're gonna always take Massacre because just more condemns, right? And then if you're playing not Vencier on single target, you're gonna want to pick Frenzy because Frenzy just gives you more haste, and that's what Fury loves, obviously. That you get to press more buttons faster. And then Onslaught's in a weird situation where, like you said, it's like a cool idea, and I think the animation's great and the sound. I like pressing it when I do spec it for fun, but it doesn't really have a place because it's just adding a button that replaces your other buttons. So it's not really like much of a gain. The only niche situation you would have for it would be like it should be tuned to be some like AoE talent, or it could replace Raging Blow, I think, if you take Onslaught and it just replaces Raging Blow so it doesn't clutter your rotation and it just buffs up Raging Blow or something like that. I don't know. But it definitely is a weird spot right now because it's too low of a damage number to want to press it like that high of a priority. So all it does is replace your Raging Blows and Bloodthirsts very slightly.
You're thinking of Inner Rage, aren't you? When you're talking about replacing Max.
Yeah, I mean, that would be cool. I missed Legion Raging Blow for sure, but...
I was going to ask you guys about legendaries that have been popping up for Fury Warriors. And 9.1, you mentioned that for progression, maybe Fury Warriors will go with Ventir Lego. That being like probably the discussion right now, things may change, obviously. Would that be a case of actually replacing the actual legendaries that are currently running for Fury? Because I don't know I think they said they won't let us have two legendaries tonight.
No.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have two yet, but definitely as of right now, and it already received a nerf, so I think most of us, Max and included, probably don't think it's gonna get nerfed again. It went down from 3 seconds to 2 seconds on the extension for Fury. But it's definitely extremely strong. You'll replace Signet for raid fights. And right now you have 100% rec up time and execute, which is really strong. It definitely bumps you up there.
For anyone that is watching and doesn't know, the new legendary for Vencier is Sinful Surge. Every time you press Condemn, if you have Recklessness up, it extends Recklessness by 2 seconds. So, and that counts with sudden death procs too, outside of Condemn phases, which is pretty fun. But like Vil said, you get 100% rec up time during any Condemn phase, which for any raid fight feels fantastic. It will suck a bit losing Signet because I like Bladestorm, but you can still use Signet for Mystic Plus. I think Signet will still be far better in M+, and maybe some raid fights that are super AoE, like if there's a Stone Legion Generals type fight, you still run Signet. But right now the Sinful Surge is definitely looking super strong. The other two that I added right now are varying in quality. The Night Fae one is it buffs Aftershock basically by extending its duration and giving it another damage component. And it's just very awkward because it makes it last 3 seconds longer, and it gives it an extra dot that targets receive when they take damage from Aftershock. So it means targets have to live 21 seconds for you to get the full value of the legendary. And even then, it's worse than Signet. So I don't think you'll see much use. Imagine in M+, you have to have your tank stand in one spot for 18 seconds without moving. That's not going to be very good. And in raids, good luck having ads live for 21 seconds of the raid fight. So
so the Necrolord legendary, it makes your banner that gives 400 mastery to your friends. It makes it affect one more target, and I believe for every 20 raid, 20 or 40 for Fury, I can't remember.
It's 20 for Fury, and
20 for Fury,
10 for Prize.
10 for product. It extends the banner buff on yourself, specifically not on your allies, only yourself by 1 second. So you get some, especially as prot, you get some pretty long banners, but that's beside the point. As Fury, it's fine, I think. It's depending on how many classes you bring that get very good value out of banner, it could be really good. If you would play Necrolord, that is.
Fire mages.
Boomkins. I mean, normally you'd say Boomkins, but Boomkins.
We're not going to talk about Boomkins again.
That's
Shadow
a protection.
Priests actually get a lot of value from Mastery right now, and they're looking to be one of the best specs in the next raid. So, that being said, I think for Fury specifically, right now, Vencia with Sinful Surge on single target is far enough ahead that even any variation of Necrolord, assuming you're buffing like super optimally, falls behind in terms of like a 5-minute sim situation. Obviously, Necrolord would give you a bit of extra oomph, like burst in like certain windows. Overall damage, not for yourself, obviously, but Glory is, like Anda said, it like definitely will have some use, that Necrolord legendary. And the Vencier one looks very good, and it's super fun. I can, at least me raid testing, and I'm sure Vil can agree that it's super fun to play Fury with the new legendary. Like, just it feels so good to have permanent wreck. You're just going condemn, like Raging Blow, Rampage over and over again, and it feels great.
Yeah, I've been loving it in raid testing. Definitely brings me back to Legion, where it just feels really fast. You're just going between Execute, Rampage, Raging Blow. You don't really have to hit Bloodthirst that much. The only thing I can already see people are going to be complaining about it. It's similar to Legion Juggernaut, where if you leave your target for a few seconds, you like lose all your damage. In this case, you'll lose your Recklessness, but this one's much more strict. If you leave the target for maybe even 4 seconds, you could lose your Rec, and you won't have it back up until you activate your next one. So I can already see people are not going to be happy.
Yeah, it's a very vicious cycle, because because we play with anger management, obviously losing your rec will mean your next rec is going to be even further away, because you don't get 100% extra rage all the time. So that could be an issue. I do believe they could be nerfing it to like 1.5 seconds though, down from 2 still, because it does seem very, very, very strong still.
If they nerf it to 1.5, it's going to feel awful. I will hate playing it if it goes down to 1.5, because like Vil said, just you get a random mechanic and you lost your rec. Goodbye.
Even if you play it good, like if you get good RNG that the mechanic times out like between your executes and you can leap out, charge back in, maybe you'll be good. But outside of that, it's not going to be good.
Do you guys think Fury will go back to Venthyr if they switch to Night Fae now? If the legendary is going to be tuned below Signet?
If it's going to be below Signet, no. The Night Fae one's below Signet, and that's like Night Fae is still going to be pretty good, but it's going to be pretty far behind Venthyr on single target if this stays at the 2 seconds that's currently at. That being said, like so far in the next raid, all the fights looked really good for Vencier, like that we have tested so far, except for Kelsazad. That fight looked insane for Night Fae. So maybe, some people when they're doing prog, they can switch back to Night Fae or Kelsazad and then come back for Sylvanas to Vencier. I don't know. Covenants, by the way. But for Mystic Plus, Night Fae is still going to be the best because just the Soulbind's Aftershock itself, and even if the Night Fate Legendary is bad, Signet's still insane in M+. So you'll play Night Fate for M+, I guess, and then Venseer for rating is what it looks like right now, at least. Obviously, like you said, if they end up nerfing the Legendary anymore, the Venseer one, then maybe we just stick Night Fate.
Obviously, we were getting like comments on our Warrior videos and on our stream as well about Necrolords and Necrolords. And whenever I think of Mastery for Fury, that's in rage damage. And if the Necrolord Legendary would, for some reason, be tuned maybe slightly ahead of the other ones, would the playstyle or the talent build change anything to accommodate maybe a more enrage uptime focus? Although you kind of still want to optimize enrage uptime now as it is. But in the last couple of years at the very least, I cannot remember really in Legion. Fury focused very heavily at the end of BFA for crit because of Cold Steel Hot Blood. Now it's back to haste. I cannot recall if it ever wanted Mastery very heavily just to have a lot of damage during enrage. If we do get like Necrolords, would that change anything in 9.1? Build-wise, talent-wise?
You'd play Dragon Roar instead of Bladestorm, just because you don't have Signet anymore. And then you'd play Siegebreaker instead of Anger Management. Just because you don't have the extra rage gen from Signet and you don't need the shorter Rex to proc Signet anymore. So you just play Siegebreaker and Dragon Roar, but other than that, you'd still just play everything else the same, unfortunately.
Yeah, the talents are mostly the same besides what he mentioned. The only other thing is because they decided to add a stat DR for some reason, and it's already happening this tier, even with the first tier of gear. You sometimes have to jump crit or reverse as Fury, even though it doesn't really do anything, just because you're hitting the DR on haste and mastery. The mastery is coming from Necklord Banner or the Night Fate Soulbind. But yeah, I think in Bisque gear, a lot of the times you want to go crit just because of diminishing returns.
And still no love for Reckless Abandon.
That talent.
There's an interesting bug with Reckless Abandon. Oh, can we call it a bug? I think it is. So in the initial iteration of it on the beta, it gave you Bloodthirst and Raging Blow. It replaces them with Bloodbath and Crushing Blow, respectively, and it buffs both of their damage by 100%, reduces Bloodthirst cooldown from 3 global cooldowns to just 2 global cooldowns, and your Crushing Blow also gains a charge built in. But later on in the beta, they actually did buff Bloodthirst and Raging Blow specifically by 15% roughly, but they forgot to buff the Reckless Abandon versions of them. So instead of just being twice as good, they're just only like 30% better now. So it's even worse than early on. It's just kind of a dead talent right now. It just doesn't achieve anything the other talents on the road don't. It's just worse at what it does.
To add on to that, it also, if anyone's tried playing it in like M+, so just in a race setting, because I'm weird, it feels really bad on any AoE situation or in any situation where you have execute available, because it's buffing your 2 fillers basically with Raging Blow and Bloodthirst. And in an AoE situation, you're not pressing those buttons very often, right? Because you're going to be rampaging a lot in AoE because you have a lot of rage because of your cooldowns are up. And you're pressing Whirlwind constantly on AoE too to keep up that buff. And then execute phase, you have execute, meaning you're pressing the other 2 buttons that are getting buffed less. So it's just a weird talent where it's really strong technically outside of execute phase and outside of AoE, but those situations don't happen often. And even then, it's basically just equal with Siegebreaker. And Siegebreaker gets value in execute. And Anger Management is also still very, very strong with, the different legendaries that we have available right now. It gets even more value than it would normally, which means it beats both of those talents that I just mentioned. So Reckless Abandon is in a weird spot. Personally, he mentioned the name of the Bloodthirst was Bloodbath, and I wish Bloodbath just came back. That's what I wish would come back. Just make Reckless Abandon like it built in the old Bloodbath effect into Wreck. So all your attacks just apply like an extra bleed to the target for like extra damage. So it made your Wreck like super bursty. I think that'd be fun, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, that's initially what I thought when I saw the tooltip in beta. So, oh my god, we're getting Bloodbath back. Oh, that was so cool to play with.
And then it's just a slightly stronger Blood Surge.
It has a different icon though.
That you can't even keep on cooldown because for some reason they decided reducing its cooldown on an already cluttered rotation made sense. It's sadly just not good. And the charge on Crushing Blow sometimes can kill you. Try playing that on Plaguefall last boss. You're not gonna have a good time, trust me.
Well, that sounds familiar. I think it's a repressed memory I might have had when I played Fury. I can see it being good in PvP maybe, but otherwise, yeah, it's a shame because it felt like an interesting addition to the rotation, but maybe it's on a weird talent row. Maybe if they move it slightly lower, I don't know what you guys think.
If they moved it, you could maybe see it get played, but like they'd have to nerf it maybe slightly because its power level like. It's just super weak compared to the other two talents on that row, which are super strong. But I think it'd beat a lot of the other talents on other rows.
What if it could be put instead of C?
You could do that, and
then you'll always play it just because.
Yeah, you'd always play it in its current.
Yeah.
I think like the thing is, it buffing Raging Blow gives it like interesting synergy with Cruelty because they work together. But it's just undertuned right now. I think like. Maybe make it extend rec as well, give it a longer duration. Or make it work with the new Vencia legendary. I don't even know if it would be good, even if it did work. But currently, if you extend your rec with the new Vencia legendary, it doesn't actually extend the Reckless Abandon effect. So like, your rec will keep going and your abilities will just go back to normal and not be empowered anymore, which is really weird because that doesn't make sense, but that's how it works. It would be cool if they at least work together. So it gave it maybe some niche usage. I think changing it entirely would be better. Even bring it back to the old version. I don't know how much you guys played around with the BFA version of Reckless Abandon, where it just gave you 100 rage and made recklessness last longer. I liked that a lot personally. I was a big fan of that because it made your entering into rec feel a lot stronger. You could rampage, recklessness, rampage immediately again, and that felt really good. And right now, 50 rage is almost enough to do it, but not quite.
Especially on AoE, Reckless Abandon felt really, really good in conjunction with Blood of the Enemy.
This is something that I wanted to also discuss a little bit. It's a little bit of a more controversial topic, but it's obviously has to do with the Covenants because we've seen the majority of the warriors being Venthyr for progression and then switching to Night Fae, and now once the 9.1 raid comes out, you're switching back to Venthyr and then back to Night Fae. This seems a little bit silly. So how far ahead is Venthyr ahead of Night Fae? And is that because strictly of Condemned and Soulbinds, or is it because of also the new legendary that we're gonna have in 9.1? What do you guys think about this? Is it still a loss to just stay one Covenant, and is cleaving Condemned with Whirlwind never gonna catch up to Ancient Aftershock?
As of right now, I don't think Venthyr could ever compete in Night Fae with AoE. And also Night Fae is technically better in raid now too, since it's a little ahead or about equal in single target. But with the new legendary, I think Venthyr has a pretty nice spot where it's better in single target and execute now. Because even right now, Venthyr is like the worst execute out of the Covenants, which is kind of funny. The other two...
That feels so weird. It's so counterproductive that that's the case, that Venthyr loses an execute to the other Covenants. You have this empowered execute and you do worse execute damage. It's very weird.
But yeah, I think the other two Covenants are kind of whatever. Kyrian is honestly really bad for Fury. Like it's... if you want to stay away from a Covenant, I'd probably stay away from Kyrian. It might be good on something like Sludge Fist, but I don't think anyone really wants to try swapping to Kyrian just for Sludge Fist. Necro is okay. It's some group utility, but that's more of a protection thing, I think, especially with the new legendary.
I would come here from the perspective of a brand new player, thinking about getting into Fury, and I would ask you guys like, what would be like, a quick tip or a quick advice for, people maybe listening to the podcast, getting really, excited about hearing, everything that was discussed. What would you guys say to a brand new player who's like trying to get into Fury? Maybe do some, I don't know, heroic level, mythic plus 15s, stuff like that.
I can speak first on this, I guess. If you want to get better at Fury really fast, it sounds really lame, but just go hit a target dummy for like 30 minutes, just straight. It sounds really lame because like I don't want to hit a target dummy, but Fury is all about muscle memory because it is a really fast-paced spec, and if you compare it to most of the other specs in the game, you're gonna feel so overwhelmed because you have like 4 different buttons lighting up and coming off cooldown constantly, and you're gonna get confused about which to press. And if you just go hit a target dummy for like 30 minutes, you hopefully, that should get you time to like get accustomed to the feel of the spec, the flow of the spec. So you can understand it a bit better muscle memory wise. Even though it's fast and you're going to see a lot of buttons coming off cooldown, it is fairly static. There's not a lot of RNG in the rotation other than like minor Raging Blow resets. So once you get that flow handled, it's going to come a lot better to you naturally. And then you can go into dungeons and start smacking with Bladestorm once you get accustomed to the general flow of it.
Either keep, like especially in dungeons or in some raid fights where you can play fresh meat, either keep in mind what targets you already used it on, or I think there's a weak aura for it, which I don't use personally because I think it clutters up my screen way too much. So because you want to use those free enrages in a positive way. Like if you just proc an enrage off a rampage, you don't want to be using your next bloodthirst on a target to proc free enrage. That's like you're just wasting an enrage basically for nothing. And then what Max said, just hit target dummy, get the flow right, because it's more or less the same every time. Like you press the same order of buttons more or less every time, and have good keybinds that you can press while moving all the time, always.
Really important.
Never stop pumping.
Actually, I want to, if I could like interject, I want to talk about the talents really quick again.
Sure.
Because there was like, I forgot to mention it, but I don't know how everyone else here feels. But for me, I wish, like looking back at some old talent tree versions for Fury, I think like we were talking about this, the frothing cruelty row being super undertuned and they don't feel that great to pick between because they don't do much. I think utility talent rows are actually much more interesting to pick between for me personally. And like an example I can use is an old talent row from Mop and Wad. It was the Vigilance, Mass Spell Reflect, Safeguard row. And all 3 of these were utility talents, but they all had like reasons to pick them, right? Safeguard was basically just intervene and the current Safeguard conduit mixed into one. Vigilance was like that tank external, or just an external that you generally gave to a tank. And a Mass Spell Reflect was, Mass Spell Reflect.
Yeah.
Which, like, I think that type of row is a lot more interesting than a DPS row where all 3 talents are undertuned, or there's a clear winner. Because that way each talent has its purpose to shine and you could try them out in different situations. Meanwhile, a DPS row, especially when they all kind of do the same thing, it'll generally just boil down to you sim it and you see which one's best and then you just pick that one always. And the other 2 don't really have a difference in like how you use them. I think good DPS talent rows are something like the first row for Fury actually, with Sudden Deaths versus Fresh Meat versus War Machine. They each have a reason to pick them. Sudden Deaths is just generally very good. Fresh Meat has some really cool interactions with Mythic Plus or ad fights to keep your enrage rolling. And War Machine's undertuned, but that's besides the point. And then, but like, that type of talent row is a good row in my opinion, where you have clear reasons to pick them all. And something like the Frothing row, they all do the same thing. They just increase your rage gen in different ways. And I think more utility rows would be cool, in my opinion. I don't know how Anda and Vil feel though.
I think the Bladestorm row is also technically a good example of a good talent row. You have Meat Cleaver, which is supposed to buff you like Perma Cleave. It's a bit bad, but once again, besides the point, you have Dragon Roar, that's like a 30-second, supposed to be AoE nuke, also a bit undertuned right now, sadly. Then you have Bladestorm on a 1 minute. Like if those were actually all tuned well, you could choose them in different situations and excel at different stuff. That would be great. But yeah, what Max said is, I think the utility rows for Warrior right now that you have to choose between, like on 25 row, you have to choose between a stun and 2 charges, or 2 charges and Impending Victory, which Impending Victory is pretty underrated still. It's for fights like Sludgefist, it's incredibly good because you cannot die with it, kinda. or the Furious Charge Bounding Strike Warpaint row. Why would I not want to take 10% less damage? Why would I ever take the other two? I don't know. These rows are I feel like they're very top heavy. You don't really have a choice quite often. It's sad as it is.
Yeah, definitely agreeing with Max there. That those wad rows were something. If we could get Vigilance back, that'd be amazing. Just those abilities are just much more satisfying than damage ones. A lot of the time, like saving the tank with Vigilance or something like that. And in terms of what to tell new players, Sanda definitely had a good point about Fresh Meat. That talent, if you can master it, is extremely strong for Fury and AoE and dungeons, like he was saying. And just for warriors in general, I'd say one of the most important things, and not just Fury, like the other two specs, is just learning what you can like spell reflect. Now that we got that back, that's a really strong ability. So you might die a few times, but I tested on just about anything that looks like a spell. And sometimes it even works on physical stuff, which is weird, but you never know.
Yeah, for most reference, I think all the Skyhold spec channels now have the Spell Reflect sheet linked, and that's rather up to date. If it's not, I'll hold out sense and we get it fixed. If you find anything that isn't as it's listed there.
Yeah, it's interesting that Max started out with looking back at old talent rows that could work better. Because we do have a segment within the podcast there where we ask, you guys like, hey, if you were, in charge of the Fury spec at Blizzard, what ability would you invent, or what ability or talent would you bring back? So I'm guessing you guys pretty much answered it, but I don't know, if you feel creative, would you have invented a brand new ability for Fury Warrior? Let's say in the new expansion for World of Warcraft, where Irel gets all, super mad and throws light at everybody and shit.
I don't need to invent something new, just bring back the disrupting shout thing from Mob, the AoE interrupt.
Oh my god, I remember that in PvP. Oh my god.
I think it's a really well-designed ability in the way that it's not like a lot of classes have like AoE stuns and stuff. You could say, yeah, bring back Shockwave so Warrior has an AoE disrupt. Yes and no, but you don't do something different than the other classes. And I think Disrupting Shout fills that role very nice, that you do something special. Yeah. Something a warrior would do, just shout at people very angrily so they can't cast spells anymore.
Yeah.
Now it seems like almost every other pack in the dungeon has an AoE interrupt Fury Warrior.
But that shit was so annoying in arenas in MoP. That's when I was, it felt like warriors had all the interrupts all the time. You could not fucking cast. It was like, what?
It actually did share a cooldown with Pummel though, didn't it? Like when you use it,
not
put
at
your
the
Pummel in
beginning.
a 50 sec. No, not at the beginning, maybe. Yeah.
I remember I was playing a Holy Priest at the time. No way. No. When I saw a warrior, I was like, nope. It was bad times. Yeah.
What you could do actually to make that talent bring it back, or not talent, bring that ability back. You could make it a talent and like it replaces Intimidating Shout or something. So in PvP, if you took it, you lost the fear or something. That would be like something you could do, I guess. If I had to bring an ability back or make a new one. I mean, like the easy one is bring back Odin's Fury. But
Odin's Fury, yeah.
I think, Odin's Fury would feel really good if it gave a lot of rage. Like with the new rec, if it always gave the Odin part, where it was the rage gen and not the leech. That'd feel really good, actually.
Yeah.
Or bring back old execute that cost rage. I'll take either one. You'd have to redesign the entire spec though, I think, to a degree to bring that back.
Yeah, it's not a problem. The point is
just bake and massacre.
You could, dude. Hold on. If I could bring back the Antaurus execute phase.
You could make it weaker or something, like proc rampages only do half the damage or something, so they're literally just there to give you enrage, so it doesn't feel that slow.
They kind of just took mine, but I definitely would bring back the Antaurus execute style, where if your execute crit, your rampage is free. I think that was like the best part of Fury for me. And just talking about what Anda said, they could do something like I didn't play back then, but I know they had a few banners. They could do something like a banner row, so you could pick between 3 banners and each give utility.
Yeah,
You
that
do something
was
like that. That could be good.
And I think Max really hit the subject pretty good. Having utility talent roads actually also makes life easier for the devs. You know, stopping to think and, you know, waste all this time on balancing and tuning all these DPS talents.
Just give everything baseline that's new and just put that utility.
Not in that extreme, but yeah, they feel that they would be of much more value. And this is actually a cool idea. Like, yeah, Warrior used to have different banners, but I think they were like PvP talents more, or more PvP focused back then. If they would be able to introduce something like this in a PvE environment, that would be pretty cool. Like the banners, like a banner
Might
roll.
also
That'd be
fix
super
the
cool.
Mythic Plus utility kit issue that Fury doesn't really have. I don't think Arms has an amazing utility in Mythic Plus, but
no, dude. But I mean, if they would bring back, like Anders said, the intimidating shout interrupt, like in Mythic Plus, where you have like dungeons with like two or three casters starting shit, that would be fucking amazing. You would want a Fury Warrior.
I mean,
for
the
that.
only other spec that does something similar to this is Prot Paladin, and realistically. Yeah, but they have
True.
Oh man,
And Vengeance, Demon Hunter, but
Oh yeah, you have the sigil of silence. Yeah, but boom boom boom, they kind of have to be tied
Boom,
together.
boom. Oh yeah.
Ops can move out of that though.
Yeah.
If we shot them very hard, they won't. I mean, the first eardrums don't go away.
Very true. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to get into for sure, and but I think we only touched the surface on, you know, what can be discussed in terms of Fury. Like, I don't know if you guys felt like if we touched on the biggest issue for Fury. Maybe it's not like a whole big ass issue or more a range of smaller issues with Fury currently in the game, but I got the impression that overall the specs seems pretty fine at this point in the game, with a couple of minuses in Mythic Plus, but definitely a powerhouse for rating, especially, you know, this Castle Nathria. And you guys said that it's looking pretty good for Sanctum of Domination too, for what you've seen. So
I think in Sanctum it's definitely going to be one of the better melee, at least in its current state.
yeah.
It's looking really good. Obviously DKs have AMZ, but like hopefully they'll get
Maybe I'll be
that should get nerfed. And in terms of raw damage, it's looking like super strong actually. Like Vil said, our execute phase looks like the best of any spec in the game other than Shadow Priest.
Yeah.
Which should give you like a very solid spot in raid for sure. It won't be like start of Castle Nathria where some guilds were dropping DPS warriors to bring prot warriors instead. Fury Warrior should definitely have a solid spot, at least at the moment. And I think you guys hit the nail on the head. With Fury is good right now, with a couple of smaller issues like some weak talents that we wish could get fixed up, but it's not in a bad spot by any means. And sorry, Anda, I cut you off.
No worries. What people are overlooking, if you play Condemn with Sinful Surge, you also are crazy tanky during execute phases. Like if you ever played Condemn Warrior on the Nathria's last phase, you see other people like having to pop cooldowns and stuff for all the blood prices.
Yep.
On Condemn Warrior, your health bar doesn't move. It actually just does not move in the last phase. You're at 100% all the time. It is honestly kind of insane how tanky Warrior gets. And I think the only thing we didn't touch on would maybe be, because like our low target cleave is basically a single target cleave. So if they want to buff us our single target damage, they also have to take into account what we would do on cleave then, which they can do by just turning down the whirlwind like modifier on AoE, which they have done earlier this expansion, but I don't think they want to do that. So a single target might just stay a bit below average for that reason, sadly.
Fair enough. Well, I think it's safe to say like we're definitely going to have another episode on Fury after 9.1.
If you guys are down.
If you guys are down for sure, because there probably going to be a lot of things to talk about after we get to see, you know, the actual performance and the finality of the raid and the specs and the legendaries and all of that, and maybe touch on more stuff. And I would love to speculate on the next episode on, you know, what could tier sets bring to Fury Warrior, but we'll keep that for the next episode. All right.
Please, tier set.
I'm pretty sure that they'll happen. I mean, it's pretty much confirmed.
They can.
Yeah.
If it wasn't 100% confirmed, they cannot back out on this one. Now everybody's on there.
well, I'm not gonna say
Didn't
it.
say class sets, not tier sets.
He said
specifically
class
that
sets,
wording. I'm a bit worried about that wording. Why would they change the naming of it?
Oh,
Make battle shall give 5% more attack power.
Oh, no. No. Using Howl now has 5 seconds less cooldown. Oh no.
That's so bad.
yeah.
We'll be hopeful. Hopium.
Definitely. Also, I wanted to say that if anybody watching or listening want to check out the boys, you're gonna have all the links in the description. Obviously, we have to mention the Skyhold Discord, where you should go every time you want, some information and try to find something out about any warrior spec. Now we're talking about Fury, and links in the description to Twitters, Twitches, and everything the boys might have and want to be, published, promoted. Definitely check the description up, for Anda, Max, Vil, all of the good boys. Obviously, we're gonna have link to the pieces. Everybody know who Pieces is right now, and Limit. I mean, come on. So pretty hyperinos. Anything you want to add to that?
Basically, because you said everything, man. We certainly had our all of our questions answered in the Skyhold, and we learned a lot more about warriors. So we cannot really stress this enough to you guys. And I'm still waiting for that Skyhold podcast to come back. I don't know who was in charge of it initially, but that was
man.
That was really cool. And thank you guys for agreeing to make this episode. I know you guys have raids soon, so we don't want to keep you too much.
It's in like 6.5 hours.
Yeah, I thought it was soon, but I am so bad at time zones.
He just came over to EU like 5 weeks ago, and his warrior's better geared than mine, and I've cleared the raid 10 out of 10 since January. How is this a thing?
It's full bisc, baby. 230. Let's go.
Pretty cool.
That was a blast talking to you guys, and I hope we can do it again in 9.1 once we know more than just legendary. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a meta established and see exactly how Fury's kicking ass. See what Covenant is gonna be played, if it's gonna be Venti or not.
For sure. So thank you guys once again. Thank you everybody for watching or listening. You can find us everywhere: Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, whatever you want to listen, or on YouTube, watch it. That's it.
That's about it. We'll see you next week with another episode, and have a great week, everybody.
A great week.
Awkward smiling at the camera. Check.
I'ma do it /bow. Still I play WoW.